In the name of Hades, Olympus, I accept this video. You might have clicked on this video because you like playing indie games, or you don't, but want to know more about it. This might be your first video from this channel, or you have watched one of my previous videos. Where am I going with this? Oh yes, what I wanted to say is that I love playing indie games. And the reason why I said all the things that I said before was because if you have seen one of my previous videos, it would be pretty clear that I like those type of games. I mean, most of my previous video had gameplay from indie titles. It is pretty clear that I like those type of games. Well, previously, I didn't knew why I liked indie games. I guess I was bored and wanted to play something good for a change. Because I was one of those kids who didn't like playing games that were, you know, two-dimensional. Whoa. I know. I was one of those naive kids who only played 3D open world games or the FPS ones. You know, the typical GTA and Call of Duty type of games, in which I had no clue what to do. All I did was ride a bike recklessly and shoot the bad guys with bullets. But I guess something changed inside of me and I got hooked to playing indie games. I say this as if now I know why I like playing indie games. I have no clue. For example, Half-Life series is one of the greatest game series of all time. But when I played the game for the first time, I had zero clue what the hell was going on. I had some idea of what I was supposed to do and was not totally oblivious to what was going on in my surroundings. But I didn't know the story was that complex. I realized that way later when I watched some video analysis of the game. I guess everyone loved the gameplay when they were a kid, but growing up was understanding that it had a well-knitted storyline too. I have been meaning to play that game again, and that is why I will be streaming Black Mesa. Maybe streaming at some point, or maybe not. I shouldn't make such a big promise. And if you're wondering, why Black Mesa?
But why? Why would you do that? Why would you do any of that?
Or what is Black Mesa? Well, it is the Half-Life series reimagined, which is developed by some fan of the original series. It is pretty well made too, from what I have seen and heard from people that I know in real life, and is not some random game reviewer online. And for the why part of the question, because I wanted to play something different, because playing the old one will bore me. If you're thinking why it will bore me, don't worry. I will answer that later in the video. This video, which is getting off topic. But you have to pay respect to the Valve gods who release games, well, sometimes. Even though I don't have that many reasons why I like indie games, and why it is the only part of the gaming industry which has redeemable qualities. I do have certain aspects that make indie games way better than its competition, who have more budget to do marketing, promoting, all the boring stuff. I can literally talk for hours about why I like indie games. You know, it will be really funny if this video doesn't reach the hour mark. But anyways, let's go along with this. Gameplay. Oh, what can I say about that? Gamers love a good gameplay. It is the core mechanics of what makes a video game good or bad. It is one of the basic things that you have to get right to make a video game memorable. But somehow, there are so many games that fail to do so. Well, it wouldn't be that big of a problem if they, you know, didn't release it and asked money for their broken game.
Ruddy! Where is he? Right! Killer out there somewhere. Hey! Show yourself!
You would think it shouldn't be that prominent, but But you would be pretty surprised because there are so many games that are released in an unfinished stage. The problem with games nowadays is that they try to do a lot, even when it's not necessary. For a long time, they are trying to focus more on the photorealism part, to make their games look as real as possible so it can be played by people who don't go outside that much. We got original and funny jokes here, never been said before. Those type of games are good to look at, but most of the time, it's just that. There isn't much value in it, just like how it is with shallow good-looking celebrities. But it's quite clear why game developers do that, because people love that. I was one of those kids. I remember when I first saw GTA 5 after playing San Andreas, and was stunned by how good it looked. But when I played the game, I would do the same thing that I did in San Andreas. Roam around and not give a fuck about the story. Which is pretty good. But that isn't the first thing that attracted me towards the franchise. Besides that, there are so many things to do in those games. I would always get overwhelmed with choices. For example, in Vice City when you tried to swim, you would die instantly. And at that time, it didn't make that much sense. It was pretty hilarious to see NPCs drown the moment they hit any water body. But they removed that in later installments and added so many things to explore and find rare collectibles, which did something. I don't know, I was busy punching people. What I want to say with all that is it's good to limit the players to certain things. You don't have to overburden the players with lots of complicated mechanisms. It's nice to have them, but nobody's going to use them anyway. Photorealistic graphics is good, but it isn't something that makes or breaks a game. A perfect example of this would be Minecraft. Very simple game with simple game elements. You mine and you craft. Minecraft, even with such simple game mechanics, it is the most bought and played video game of all time. Its simplicity is what makes it good. Anyone can play it. Casual players can enjoy doing normal stuff and fail miserably when the night falls in. The hardcore players will do what they usually do, which is sweat their ass off to speedrun it. It has something for everyone and doesn't try that hard to make things messy. The graphics aren't that appealing, but it can be altered by using mods. And by doing that, now you can sit your pants when a creeper jump scares you in 4K with RTX on. The base game is pretty easy to grasp on, except the redstone thing. But if you want to, there are mods that can make the game messier than my parents' marriage life. But that's what I love about these simple games, is that people with the right tools and a working brain, unlike me, can make something to add on the game itself. I did say how open world games burden you with too many things to do, when Minecraft is an open world game in itself. Well, the difference is that you can do lots of things in Minecraft, but there aren't that many things to explore. Unless you wanna find every single type of terracotta there is. Well, the next game that I'm gonna use as an example isn't even an open world game, and that is 2D Minecraft. I hate when people call it a 2D ripoff of Minecraft. It's fucking Terraria. Terraria was the first indie title that I ever played. That's a lie. It was the first indie game I played after knowing what indie means. That's a lie too. I learned about that word way later. But my point is, it was the first indie game that I played and was just amazed on how good it was. Easily my favorite game of all time. I mean, I haven't played it that much, but I guess it's pretty good. And if you would ask me why it's my favorite game, I wouldn't be able to give you one good reason, except you can pet dogs and cats. Even though Terraria is not an open world game, the exploration aspect of this game is just untouchable. You spawn in the world with basic tools such as an axe, a pickaxe, and if the Terraria gods are really angry, you might get a broken copper sword.
Why?
And then you have to make the hardest decision which is known to mankind. That is, which way to go, left or right? And then come back crying because the evil scary monsters are too tough for your faint heart to handle. But that's what makes this game so much better. You can make a dirt house by digging in to pass the night, or you can man up and go into a cave and fall and die. This is the part where things get interesting. You start to find lots of cool things. Things that you don't know what to do with. Some of them are pretty mysterious. which you bring back to this asshole who loves to open gates at night. And this is the magic of Terraria. There are just too many goddamn things. And it doesn't throw those things all together at you. It's done in the right pacing. Can't go beyond the purple land? Dig inside and find shiny stones to make yourself stronger. Can't get inside this orange brownish place? Fight this scary plant to get a ticket for the entry. And then die a painful death. Want to go inside this old man's dungeon? Do it in the morning. Don't listen to this old bastard and you will get a special little something. This weird looking thing looks interesting? Smash it with your hammer to invite some friends over to have a great time. The exploration part of Terraria is what made me want to play it more than anything. It has been done so perfectly. Not like the other games where there is an invisible wall which stops you and then suddenly unlocks after you complete a mission. But hold on, that isn't all of it. Then there are the mods of this game which adds, changes and improves so many things. It makes the whole experience so much better. Or worse, if you decide to play the Calamity mod, you masochists. Well, I have been rambling for a long time about the exploration factor of the game, but that isn't the only thing that's good. There are so many types of enemies to keep things interesting, who drop valuable things, so you're not just killing them for the sake of it. There are dozens of bosses and mini-bosses. There is a big fish thing which does a cool trick of disappearing when you hit it too much. The combat system is pretty decent, but it's enjoyable because there are so many weapons to choose from that suits your playing style and works well with what armor and accessories you have. All in all, there are so many biomes to explore, weapons to find, enemies to die from, and bosses that will give you nightmare. It's one of those rare things in my life which hasn't got boring. Well, there is a game that has gotten close to quench that inner gamer thirst. Valheim. Oh, I've gotten a love-hate relationship with this game. While Minecraft has survival elements to it, and Terraria focuses more on the action-adventure part, Valheim just takes the best from the both and mashes it all up into this beautiful mess of a game. Personally, I don't delve myself into all the hype that surrounds a game because I know it will not live up to the standard that the people are putting it into. But this was different. It was looking like a decent game with World of Warcraft-esque graphics, and in the reviews, it said it took inspirations from the games that I like to play. I bought the game after a month of its early access release, and I hated it. To me, it was another one of those overhyped games. The servers were a mess, with the ping being too high. The game was lagging, even though the game requirements were lower than what my PC had. But you see, there was the problem. I was treating it as an online survival game like Rust. After uninstalling the game, probably a couple of weeks later, I had a resurgence in interest after seeing a video and decided to give it another chance. This time, I made a new world of my own rather than joining a server. The game still lags sometimes, but I have to let all those problems aside because it is a game run by a small group of people. So things like maintaining lots of servers or optimizing the game to cater to the needs of every different device will take time. Add to the fact that it is in early access too, but leaving that all aside, the base game in itself is just great. It is a tough game which gets frustrating. Probably the reason why I didn't like the game when I played it for the first time. Because I was chased down by this big ass hairy ugly blue son of a bitch. But when you get to know the game, it is pretty interesting, and the gradual exploration that this game has can be compared to Terraria. I haven't played the game that much, but from what I have, I can easily say that it deserves the praise that has been shown in the reviews. The combat system is pretty satisfying, and there is a lot to explore, and I mean really a lot. The game is in its infancy state, so lots of things are going to be added, which makes the whole journey of it way better. And I can't wait to see what the developers have in mind for the game. Well, these three were the games that I chose when I thought of indie games with good gameplay. Really simple games when you look at them. Nothing fancy about the graphics, but gameplay wise, you just can't beat it. They have so much to offer. With all that being said, let's move on to the next point. Really like this soothing music. Who doesn't love a bit of OST from their favorite video game? It just makes the whole experience more memorable, and might be the reason one gets the feeling of nostalgia when they hear it. A good example that I can relate to can be of Contra, a classic gem of a game with that iconic music. Just hearing these retro beats reminds me of those old days when me and my brother would get back from school in a hot sunny day and straight up jump to the bootleg console that we forced our parents to buy for us and play co-op together and continue to play until our mom stopped us. Weren't those the simpler times? Minecraft can be a great example of those simpler times. The soundtrack of that game can make anyone nostalgic. While on the other hand, there is Terraria, whose music just goes funky. A popular example can be from Undertale. I mean, who hasn't heard of Megalovania? It is a classic one which has spawned so many memes. But one of my favorite is from Celeste. The beat switch in Resurrections is just phenomenal. Not only that, the music highlights the game itself, which is brilliant in its own standards. Music like these make a good game a great game. It reminds you of that moment when you played it for the first time and fell in love with it. Celeste is a wonderful game with great visuals and a heartwarming story, but for me, the music is the best part about it. I love dying over and over again because the music keeps me going. Lena Rain, keep doing what you do. It's just wonderful. Another soundtrack that keeps me going is from Dead Cells. Even though I die hundreds of times, I will keep on going. Most people go to the clock tower to eventually enter the clock room to defeat the timekeeper. But I just wanna listen to that soundtrack while I sit my pants in one boss cell. It is a really hard game but has the perfect progression system. It only gets more difficult when you learn to play better, and even then you have the option to do that. The game feels incredibly smooth. It plays out the way that you want it to. You can go for the easy and safe route by using range weapons, or just go sicko mode with some melee weapon. And it kinda makes you lean towards choosing the latter one, because if you kill enemies in quick successions, you will get a buff that makes you go faster, and the buff runs out when you slow down. And me, being a sucker for that, I just keep doing it, even though going faster means you need better reflex, and sometimes my hand cannot keep up to that. But am I gonna stop doing that? No. I mean, it's so much fun to do that while the Fractured Shrine soundtrack plays in the background. Yuan Laulen, you are making crack cocaine of music. I just can't get enough of it. It does a wonderful thing of making you feel the game through its music. Another example of that can be of Hades. If there's any game that can make you feel like a badass that isn't Doom, then it would be Hades. Another great game, which is pretty hard too. That is becoming a recurring thing in this video. Maybe I was the masochist all along. Well, gameplay, visual and story-wise, it was easily the best game of 2020. But the music is just... Darren Korb, who not only voice acted the character that you play as, but also made wonderful soundtracks for the game. He has been doing that for all the previous games developed by Supergiant Games. Gameplay-wise, it's one of those games that you die over and over again till it comes to you that you suck at this game. But as you already know, that cannot stop me. It's pretty well renowned too. A guy with greasy long hair.
And it's because we're giving the #1 spot to Hades.
And the man who was in Paris recommend this game.
Every time a new bullshit hard game comes out, you see the argument of, should these difficult games have an easy mode? Hades has a pretty interesting solution.
Who wouldn't love this game? It has such a great atmosphere created by those wonderful tracks with witty and well-written characters. Great atmosphere, huh? Reminds me of a game by the name of Hollow Knight. It is like the dream-like mix of Souls-like game in a platformer environment, with the trademark cute characters that almost every indie game has. I don't know why, but the mix of bugs being cute with the eerie vibes that is created by the music just goes so well. It takes the basic premise from typical Souls-like game, which is just dark, dreaded places that are hostile to every inch, and makes it into something which is appealing to literally everyone. Souls-like game lovers will enjoy how it only looks cute on the surface, but underneath that, it isn't forgiving at all. It is one of the best Metroidvania games that have came out in recent times, so fans of that genre will enjoy it too. As it has no tutorial or tells you where to go, it has that sense of freedom to roam around, so the adventure seekers will like it too. There is a heavy emphasis on RPG, which makes every playthrough different. All this, mixed with that atmospheric music, makes this game a journey to have by anyone who plays video games. Exploring all the beautiful locations in this game with that music playing in the background just makes the overall experience way better. Wonderful work done by Christopher Larkin, who made the already iconic game a timeless classic. There is a sequel which is supposed to come out. It is gonna come out eventually, someday. But let's move on to a game whose sequel did came out. The video game series of Ori. If you thought the nameless protagonist of Hollow Knight was cute, wait till you see this cuteness overloaded of a character. Well, as the name implies, it is a game revolving around Ori, who is a human-like bunny creature who kind of looks like a cat. It's something. I don't know what exactly, but what I do know is it's extremely cute. Just look at him. Now look at how detailed and well done the visuals are. And it is hand-drawn, which means the effort that they put into this game is remarkable. There are many things about this game that I admire, but for now, let's focus more on the beautiful soundtracks of this game. And it is as phenomenal as the art style and as impactful as the storyline. Just listen to these vocals by Aurelia Brighton along with Gareth Coker's incredible composition. Aurelia Brighton is just playing the strings of my heart through those vocals. The game in plain words is just beautiful in every aspect. It's one of those games that are great to even look at. Oh wait, I forgot to sit on the games made by big companies. It is not like they have bad music in their games. It's just that it doesn't convey the same feelings in the way indie games do. On one hand, you have musicians who are making tracks for games in which they were involved in the development process. It's more of a passion project where they are creating an art form about which they really care. On the other hand, there is the random 21 Pilots song that goes on while you play FIFA. So I'm taking my time on my ride. I'm not saying that the band is bad or make bad music, but I'm pretty sure they don't give a jack shit about the game and just give a legal permission so they can use their music in the game. There are AAA games which have great music too, but the indie ones feel more personal. You can clearly see that the developer and the music artist had some sort of connection while making the game, and it's reflected on the end product. And they do it quite well, because I will eventually finish the games and move on to something else, but I will keep on listening to those amazing tracks when I need a moment of inspiration. Well, on that note, let's end the music part of indie games. I hope I was able to convince you guys, because to me, all I did was talk about how much I like those games and say something about the music occasionally. But I can't help myself. They are just so good. I have to show my appreciation. It's no brainer that indie games are less expensive than a game made by some big company. But it's really funny that those overpriced games have less to offer than some indie game who cost 10 times less. You can either buy Need for Speed Heat, which is gonna cost you $70, or you can get Terraria, Hades, Binding of Isaac, Factorio, Katana Zero, Omori, Stardew Valley, Slay the Spire, Hotline Miami, and Celeste, and you will still have some money to spare. It's just absurd that there are games who are clearly released for an easy cash grab. Call of Duty Infinite Warfare can be a great example for this. You would have thought that Activision would have learned after the catastrophic disaster that was Advanced Warfare. But no, they went all in with Infinite Warfare, which backfired heavily. That video game series hasn't been the same since Black Ops 1. It was the last game from Call of Duty series that I completed. Well, that game will cost you $60, which is too much for a fucking 5-year-old game. To be honest, I would rather buy Terraria 10 times and give it to people who haven't played it. That would be way better for mankind. Even though Terraria is older, it still gets more quality updates because the game's developers just can't stop, even after saying that they are done with the game. Honestly, the content that these indie games have to offer for such a small price is just astounding. And who doesn't love to save a bit of money while still getting quality stuff? It's the main reason why Epic Store is still being used, because there are free offers for different games every week. Way better deal than buying some AAA game that isn't finished and has tons of bugs.
Is this game worth it? Does that answer your question?
Well, these three were the main points that in my opinion make indie games better. Even though I didn't talk that much about the price section. Usually I look at the price of the game before buying it. Gameplay and soundtrack comes to consideration after that. The next point, not being in the main reasons, is going to be a bit controversial. So, hear me out before you people who like stories in video games annihilate me. I don't mind a good story in a video game. If I didn't, I wouldn't be talking about that in this video. But as I said earlier, a brain can't comprehend two things at once. I love movies which have complicated stories. You know, the ones that at least make sense. But keeping up with the story while playing a game is something that's a bit hard for me. I am one of those people who skip the cutscenes and then wonder what the fuck is going on. Personally, I enjoy games which has a bit of lore going on in the background while you're submerged in the gameplay. So games like Minecraft and Terraria are perfect for me. Not Dead Cells, whose lore is, it's pretty crazy. But I'm not gonna sit here and lie that I didn't cry while relating to Madeline in Celeste, with her dealing with all those struggles that many of us are haunted by on the daily basis. Or the heartfelt story of Ori, enough to make a grown man cry. These stories feel more personal, as if the developers of these games went through similar things, which usually involves them dealing with heavy stuff, which is portrayed in a manner that doesn't shock the player right at the get-go. Omori comes to mind when I think of that. Cute art style, but underneath that, it's a psychological horror game dealing with, let's just say, it's pretty dark. Cute on the outside, but fucked up on the inside that catches you off guard? Reminds me of another game. For real, Doki Doki is nowhere near to what it looks like. In the past, there have been so many indie games that have came out with great story. If you are a fan of mystery games, then The Vanishing of Ethan Carter, Firewatch, Gone Home, and What Remains of Edith Finch will amaze you. One game that I really enjoyed was Oxen. That game's story is the dream of every kid who finds out about something mysterious and wants to go on that so-called adventure to find out about it. This game has that nostalgic feeling that every one of us had when we saw some adventure or mystery movie. And how can I forget about Undertale? The perfect example of that you don't need high-end graphics to tell a great heart-touching story. And by that, I don't mean that games made by big companies have bad story. They are more of a blockbuster story-driven type of game, which inherently isn't bad, and usually are the ones that are played and remembered by more people. For me, they don't pack the same punch as the more personal stories that indie games tend to have. Because in those games, you can see they are not trying to sell you a story, they just want to be heard. And in a way, I can relate to that. I'm going to end on the story part with that point. It is not gonna get any better than that, because it was pretty clear I don't know much about stories that goes on video games. Well, in previous points, you can rightfully say, let's agree to disagree. It's not like any game other than indie ones have bad gameplay or soundtracks or storyline. The price part was undebatable, and so is this point. Take any popular video game and just see what a mess of a fanbase they have. Take CSGO fanbase for an example. Their entire vocabulary consists of calling a gun gay to spamming GG or OP or noob. And they love to flaunt their in-game shiny gun skin, which they bought by using their parents' credit card for an insane amount from some shady account, which is for sure a hacker. Another game with great fanbase can be of Rust. What a wonderful bunch of people. And they are not racist at all. Nice and well-mannered people who are always willing to help you.
So, yeah. Could I have the bow?
Yeah,
I'm
we
just
could.
gonna. Could I have the?
100%.
Are you serious, dude? Are you?
But these aren't even half bad to the next one. League of Legends fanbase, or hellhole as I like to say it, is just on another level. All I know is that they love smashing their hands into keyboards like they're hacking into something, and are among the worst when it comes to typical rage gamer types. You know, the people who call your mother lovely things. Literally any FPS or MOBA game have these type of fans. Those games brings out the worst out of them, but for some reason, they still keep on playing.
Your problem, missile on ramp, missile on ramp.
That is why I find indie games fanbase calming. They are more open and far more accepting of each other. Well, you might say those games are more popular, so they attract different set of people. Some of them might be young or just simply awful. I agree, that is true, but their basket doesn't have some bad apples. They have some good ones, except maybe League of Legends. Their whole basket of apples is corrupted. But some of the indie games are really popular too. Terraria would be an obvious example. I'm not saying that it has the perfect fan base, but it has way more ups than downs. But I'm not gonna use that game again for an example. Because one of the best fan bases that I have ever encountered is of Stardew Valley. I don't think I have ever seen a fan base that is so wholesome than of this game. That might be because it's more on the casual side of gaming, which is more civil. This whole thing shouldn't matter that much, but it's nice to know that the game you like has a fan base of decent human beings. Because, believe me, there are so many things that have been ruined because of these said fan bases. There is another side to all of this. I will get into all of that later. Okay, this one doesn't make sense at all. Who should provide better feedback? A game made by a multi-million-dollar company which has thousands of people employed, or a game that is being handled by at most dozen of people. Surprisingly, the latter one is way better at its job to keep the fans happy. It's as if they at least care about what people think and feel about the game they make. Stardew Valley's developer Eric Barone cares more about his fans than all of the big companies combined. There have been so many incidents where he has personally contacted the people who had issues with the game in a manner which he wasn't told to or anyone expected him to do. And then there are the big companies to whom you send your concerns, and all they do is reply with an automated message sent by a bot. And a couple of weeks later, all you get from them is a half-ass advice. Meanwhile, there are indie games like Braid, Spelunky and Risk of Rain who are one-man team and still do better job at providing for the fans when needed. Because to them, you are a person who is in need and not just a number on a chart of who bought your game. And you can clearly see that they really care about it too, unlike the shallow corporations who only sees you as someone who is a potential buyer. Fucking hate those bored people who are in control of this bullshit. Let's go to the next point where my hate for them will become even more justifiable. I was having a hard time to decide on what to name this point. All I had in my mind was how indie games have more unique or out-of-the-box approach to gameplay and are more open to experiment with different game genres. Rather than making different points, I just merged them together and tried to make sense of it. With indie game developers, most of them don't have any prior experience in making games. They come up with an idea to what they wanna make and just do that. Usually, they don't go by the book and have a different outlook than the professionals. And that's what makes their games stand out from all the other generic games. A blessing in disguise is the lack of budget, and that challenges them to do things differently, which gives them more authentic and personal touch to the games. Another one is not having a board full of old people who have no idea what games are. In the situation of indie games, their core idea doesn't get convoluted by other people. Although, there are games from big companies that have really unique perspective towards its gameplay. But either it gets too complicated because they try too hard with lots of concepts, or fail to live to the promise that they made. And most of the time, it's not even the fault of the developers. but the board members who try to play safe to increase the revenue. That is why there are so many games that look the same, feel the same when you play it, and die in mere days after getting hyped up. And for that reason, you have to respect the ones who try to do things differently. Just take Katana Zero for an example. Out of the box thinking at its finest. I don't know how to explain it, but it's a game that works like a game. It has a level-oriented game design in which you plan out the situation of how it's supposed to go before the character actually does it. This game has changed my whole perception towards how I play a game. The story is amazing and the music goes smooth, but the gameplay is what stands out from any other game that I've ever played. A good example of unique gameplay can be of Noita. It is a roguelite game where you die most of the time. But the fun part about it is that everything can be simulated by you. The game in itself is really simple. You see various types of creatures which you kill by using a weapon whose powers can be combined to make something unique every time you play. The world is procedurally generated every time, but having a different world every time you play is not something that hasn't been done before. But that, added with the concept of having a weapon that can be altered in any way you want, is just a breath of fresh air. And it's the only game that has given me the same vibe that I had when I first played Terraria. Just a simple game with great concepts that gives the player the right tools to do whatever the game has to offer. A good example of a game that has taken different genres and made it into something good can be of Spire. It takes all the good things from card games and leaves out all the pay to win stuff and fuses that with the roguelite concept. I have played other popular card games and can easily tell you that this one is way more fun to play. Even though you may not like these games, I don't know how you couldn't, but you have to appreciate the efforts of them trying to do something different. In a market where every genre has oversaturated with lookalike games, where game companies don't take any risk to make something good for a change. All they do is play safe to make a quick buck and move on to something else. The lack of greedy and uninformed board members lets the indie game developers delve into different sort of things to implement in their games, which then means there is no or less pressure on the developer to live up to the financial expectations of someone who don't understand anything about video games. Those were all the points that I had to reason that indie games might be or are better rather than the ones made by big companies, or at least have a better future in gaming industry, because by this time everyone knows that those big companies are extremely greedy and their only objective is to take more money out of your pocket and give you a bag full of shit. But by any means, I'm not saying that indie games are perfect and don't have a bad side. There might be other things, but the one that I noticed is that there are a certain type of fans, and that will be the ones who get a superiority complex by playing a fucking game. It's a problem with every piece of content that is indie. Just because the thing you like isn't made by some big corporation or is not popular as the other ones, doesn't make you a better person. These sort of people are extremely obnoxious and bring other people down if they haven't played their favorite video game. This video might have been me just bad-mouthing on all the mainstream game developers, but that doesn't mean I don't play or like the games developed by them. It's just that my favorites or the ones that I really enjoy are indie games. If I made a top 10 list of my favorite games, some of them will be from big developers, but indie games are more personal to me because I played those games at a time when I didn't have anyone to play with. I usually enjoy the mainstream games with the company of my friends. Just like there are certain movies that you enjoy more with your friends, but there are certain ones which are better to be seen alone. And the same goes for some songs which you cherish more when you listen to them alone. Unless the big companies start to make good games where they put least bit of effort, the future of video games are the indie titles. For me personally, it has brought back the fun that I used to have when I played games as a young kid. It is bringing back the joy in video games in a time where most of the games are just remakes and pay to win. It's finally over. I think I was able to convey why indie games are the thing going in the future, even though most of the time I was just talking about the games I like. If you are thinking that this is quite a long video and I should have made individual videos analyzing the games that I like. But that requires of me being smart enough to know the psychology behind games. Another thing, I haven't uploaded a video in a month, and the only reason I uploaded this video in this day is because today is the 10th anniversary of Terraria.